Hello, Algebra 1. So we are talking today about 2-3, which we're taking what we did in solving 1 and 2 step, and we're just like up in the ante here. So this is going to be 2-3, solving multi-step equations. Okay, so I'm going to do an example that kind of includes everything, and then we're going to scale it back a little bit. I just want to show you first an example where you guys can see every aspect that you would see, and then, like I said, we'll kind of scale it back and make it a little bit easier and go from there. So I'm just going to split my paper in half. And so I'm going to do my example here and my steps here. Okay, so my example, like I said, we're going to start off big and then we're kind of going to scale it back, but I just want you guys to be able to see everything involved. So we're going to have 3 plus 6x minus 2x equals 1 minus 2 times 3 minus x. Okay, so my first step here that we want to do is to distribute so there are no parentheses left in the equation. So that's going to be my first step. So just like if we were combining like terms and kind of simplifying it, that's always going to be your first kind of thought, is you want to make sure everything is as simple as possible on each side of the equal sign. So step 1, distribute. So there are no parentheses left in the equation. Now I am going to still, just like I did in our last video, I'm going to still put a line down the equal sign to kind of keep myself organized. Remember, whatever I do to one side of the equation, I have to do to the other. So remember, we're only just distributing the number that's right in front of the parentheses. So it's that -2 on the right side. Then I'm going to be distributing to my 3 and my x. Now I'm just going to bring everything else down. So 3 plus 6x minus 2x equals 1. And now is when I'm going to distribute. -2 times 3 is -6, and -2 times -x is positive 2x. Okay, so once I've gotten rid of the parentheses on both the left and right side, if there are parentheses over here, you'd want to simplify those. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to combine like terms on each side of the equation. So right now we're just kind of dealing with each separate side as like a separate problem. So second step is to combine like terms on each side of the equation. Okay, so I'm going to look first just at my left side and see if I can combine anything. And I can. 6x minus 2x can combine. And so I'm going to actually combine those. So I'm going to just bring my 3. My 3 can't combine with anything. And then 6x minus 2x, that gets me 4x. Then I'm going to look at my right side. So what can I combine here? Well, I can combine the 1 minus 6. 1 minus 6 is -5, and then that 2x can't combine with anything. Okay, so now is my next step. So my next step here is to move the variables to one side of the equation. So we have the x on one side and an x on another side. we want those to be on the same side of the equation. I usually move them over to the left side. It doesn't matter which side you want to move it to. It's totally up to you. So let's do that. That's going to be step 3. Move the variables to one side of the equation. Okay, so I have a 2x here. I have a 4x here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the 2x to this side. So how I do that, this is a positive 2x. So we're just applying our inverse operations. So positive 2x, the opposite of adding is subtracting. So I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides of the equation. Now notice how I put it under the x. I'm not subtracting 2x here. Those won't combine. I'm not subtracting 2x here because I'm subtracting it here. So remember, you're just keeping it with like terms. So my 3 here is going to come down. 4 minus 2 is 2, and the x's stay the same. Equals my negative 5 comes down. And 2x minus 2x, well, 2 minus 2 is 0, so that goes away, which is what we wanted. Okay, so then my 4th step, now that I moved my variables to one side of the equation, now we're basically at the same point that we were in the last video in 1 and 2 step equations. So all we're doing now is basically using inverse operations to solve for a variable. So my 4th step is going to be to move the constants to the other side of the equation. Remember, constants are your like numbers without any variables attached to them. So move the constants to the other side of the equation. So my constant here, so if I move my variables to the left side, I now want to move my constants to the right side. So I have a positive 3. To move that positive 3 to the other side, we're using inverse operations. If this is a plus, the opposite is a minus. So 3 minus 3 is 0. That's what we wanted. Bring that 2x down. Negative 5 minus 3 is negative 8, and we're almost done. So our last step, the last step here is to solve for the variable using inverse operations. Now with this, it's just we're going to be dividing. So solve for the variable. Using inverse operations. So 2 times x, to get that x by itself, we have to divide both sides by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1, so we have 1x, which is what we wanted. Negative 8 divided by 2 is negative 4. And that is my final answer. Remember, you can always go back and check your work by plugging it back in. Plug in negative 4 here, plug in negative 4 here, plug in negative 4 here. If both sides equal the same thing, then you've done it right, and you can move on. Okay, so let's do some examples. I know we were doing an example, but let's do some more examples. And we'll kind of scale it back a little bit. So let's look at number 1. Okay. So my first problem is going to be x over 2 minus 4 equals negative 6. Like I said, scaling it back a little. So what I want you guys to do is I want you guys to think, what would be your first step here? Because really, this is exactly like the problems that we did in the 1 and the 2 step equations. So what would be our first step? Is there anything that we have to distribute? No. Are there any like terms that we have to combine? No. Are there variables on either side of the equation? No. So all I have to do is now move my constants to the other side of the equation. I'm going to draw my line. And I want to undo my addition or subtraction. So I have that -4. I want to move the -4 to the other side of the equal sign. Since it's a negative, that means I'm going to add 4 to both sides of the equation. That x over 2 just comes down. -4 plus 4 is 0, and -6 plus 2 is -2. Now our last step is 5. Solve for the variable using inverse operations. It's x divided by 2. So to get x by itself, the opposite of division is multiplication. So we're now just going to multiply both sides by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 1x is what we want. -2 times 2 is -4. So my final answer, x equals -4. Again, I can plug it in. -4 divided by 2 is -2. -2 minus 4 is -6. Okay, let's try 2. 3x plus 5 plus 2x equals 25. Okay, so let's look at step 1. Distribute so there are no parentheses left in the equation. Are there any parentheses on the left side or on the right side? No, there aren't. So we can skip that step. Okay, then combine like terms on each side of the equation. So are there like terms on the left side or on the right side? And the answer is yes, there are. We can combine 3x and 2x. 3x plus 2x is 5x. And then I'm just going to bring that 5 down, equals 25. And so now what I want you guys to do is I want you guys to try this problem on your own and then come back and see how you did. So try this on your own, come back to check your work. Okay, so your first step after that would be to move variables to one side of the equation. I have my variables already on one side of the equation, so we're good to go. The next step would be to move the constants to the other side of the equation. So I want to move this plus 5 to the other side of the equation. So the 5x comes down. 5 minus 5 is 0. 25 minus 5 is 20. Okay, last step, solve for the variable using inverse operations. Remember, this is 5 times x. To undo that multiplication, we're going to divide both sides by 5. And so 5 divided by 5 is 1, 1x. 20 divided by 5 is 4. I get my final answer to be x equals 4. Okay, let's try another one. Okay, so if I gave you 10x minus 6 times 2x plus 5 equals 20. First thing I'm going to do is draw my line. So then what I want you guys to think is, what is your first step? Look at your steps up above. Think about it on your own. What would be the first thing you would do here? And if your first step was to distribute that -6, you would be correct. So we're going to distribute this -6 to the 2x and the positive 5. So -6 times 2x is -12x. -6 times 5 is -30, and then equals 20. That doesn't change. Okay, so now what would be our next step? And if your next step is to combine like terms, you would be correct. So 10x I can combine with -12x. 10x minus 12x is -2x. And then -30 and 20 just come down. And so now try the rest of the problem on your own. Similar to like where we were up here, similar to up here. Now you guys can do this, okay? So try this one on your own and then come back to check your work. Okay, so our first step was to just get rid of the negative 30. So I added 30 to both sides. And then to get x by itself, I divided both sides by negative 2 to get my final answer of x equals negative 25. And that's your answer. Okay, so let's try this one. It's number 4. You have 8 times 2x minus 1 minus 4x equals negative 116. So I want you guys to try this one on your own. I'm going to go through this one a little bit faster like I did at the end of number 3. So again, if you guys have any questions when you guys are going through any of these problems, make sure you're starring it, writing a note to yourself so we can talk about it in class, because sometimes I'm going to go through them in hopes that you're kind of following along and picking up on the patterns. So I want you guys to do just the first step. What would your first step be here? And then I'm going to show you. Okay, so my first step was to distribute the 8 to the 2x to get 16x and the negative 1 to get negative 8. Now, do the next step. What's the next step here? So the next step was to combine my like terms. My like terms were 16x minus 4x to get me that 12x. Now what I want you guys to do is continue solving the entire problem. And then, so pause this, try this on your own, and then I'm going to kind of do all the steps in one and then show you the answer right after this. So pause me here, try the rest on your own. Okay, so I did the rest of the problem. I added 8 to both sides of the equation. And then to get x by itself, I divided both sides by 12. My final answer is x is equal to 9. So again, if you're like struggling with any of those steps, make sure you guys are bringing those to class so we can go over those together. Okay, we're going to do some more examples. So I'm going to flip the page. Oh, okay. There we are. Okay, so number 5 is going to be 11 minus 2x minus 1 equals 118. Okay, so first step, I want you guys to be thinking, what's your first step here? And if you're thinking it's to distribute, you would be correct. Now, again, I'm just going to draw my line so I don't forget. And I'm going to distribute. Remember, we're distributing this number in front. There is really no number, but we can assume we're distributing this negative 1. So that negative 1 is going to the 2x and the minus 1. So the 11 just comes down. Negative 1 times 2x is negative 2x. Negative 1 times negative 1 is positive 1, and then equals 118. Okay, think about your next step. What would your next step be here? And if you're saying combine like terms, you would be correct. 11 plus 1, we can combine. 11 plus 1 is 12. So negative 2x plus 12 equals 118. And now we're just solving. We're just solving our two-step equation here. So I want to undo any addition or subtraction. So this plus 12, I'm going to subtract 12 from both sides. That negative 2x comes down. 12 minus 12 is 0. And 118 minus 12 is 106. Almost done. The last step is to get the x completely by itself, and we do that by dividing both sides by negative 2. So my final answer here, negative 53. Okay, we have a few more examples that I want to go through. I know. The more examples you see, the easier this is going to become. And I promise you, this is something we do throughout the entire year. So the more foundation you get with this, the better it's going to be and the more comfortable you're going to feel with more challenging stuff. Okay, let's try 6. Okay, so 6 is going to be 2 times 4x minus 1 is equal to negative 10 times x minus 3 plus 4. So this is gonna kind of going back into our first one. It involves all the steps that we have. So our first step, if we go back to our steps, is to distribute so there are no parentheses. So I'm gonna do that first. I'm gonna distribute my 2 on the left side, and I'm also gonna distribute my negative 10 on the right side. I'm gonna put my line down the middle, and then distribute. So 2 times 4x is 8x. 2 times negative 1 is negative 2. Negative 10 times x is negative 10x, and negative 10 times negative 3 is positive 30. And then that plus 4 comes down. Okay, so then I look, combine like terms on each side of the equation. So 8x minus 2, are there any like terms on the left side? No. Negative 10x plus 30 plus 4, are there any like terms on the right side? Yes. So I'm going to combine the 30 and the 4. So this side I'm just going to bring down 8x minus 2 equals negative 10x, and then 30 plus 4 is 34. Okay, so now that I've combined like terms, I'm going to move my variables to one side of the equation. So I'm going to look, 8x, negative 10x. I'm going to move the negative 10x to this side of the equation. So if it's a negative 10x, to undo that, to move it to the other side, the opposite of a negative is positive. So I'm going to add 10x to both sides of my equation. Again, we're putting it under that x because we're going to combine like terms. 10x can't combine with 2, but it can combine with 8x. So 8x plus 10x is 18x. Bring that negative 2 down. Negative 10x plus 10x is 0x, so it goes away. And then 34 comes down. Okay? My next step is to move my constants to the other side of the equation. So I move my variables to the left. I'm going to move my constants to the right. So to move this negative 2, I'm going to add 2 to both sides of the equation. And I get 18x comes down. Negative 2 plus 2 is 0 equals 34 plus 2, which is 36. Last step to get x by itself, to undo that 18 times x, I'm going to divide both sides by 18. 18 divided by 18 is 1x. 36 divided by 18 is 2. X is equal to 2. Okay, let's do one more and then we'll be done. Okay, 7. 5x minus the quantity of x minus 18 equals 6 minus 2 times x plus 15. Okay, think to yourself, what is your first step that you would do to solve this equation besides drawing your line down the equal sign? Okay. If you're saying distribute, you would be correct. So I want you guys to try to distribute that problem on your own. Get rid of those parentheses. Okay. Hopefully you've tried it on your own. So what you're doing is we're distributing, remember, this minus, that means we're distributing a minus 1 to the x and to the negative 18. And then we're looking at what numbers in front here. Remember, we're not combining those first. We're just distributing this negative 2 to the x and the 15. So 5x stays the same, and then negative 1 times x is negative x. Negative 1 times negative 18 is positive 18. Bring that equal sign down. Bring the 6 down. Negative 2 times x is negative 2x, and negative 2 times 15 is negative 30. Okay, I want you guys to do the next step on your own. Do the next step on your own here. If you need to look back at your notes, look back at your notes, but pause me here. Try this on your own. Okay, if your next step was to combine like terms, you're correct. I look on my left side, 5x minus x plus 18. I can combine 5x minus x to get 4x plus 18. And then on the right side, 6 minus 2x minus 30. I can also combine 6 minus 30. So don't forget when we're writing this minus 2x, you keep that sign. And then 6 minus 30 is negative 24. One of the biggest areas of mistakes that people make is with signs. So be careful with your signs here. Okay, so then from there, I want you guys to try the next step. What would the next step be when you guys are solving for x? And if your next step was to move the variables to the same side, you would be correct. So I have a negative 2x and a 4x. I'm going to move this negative 2x to the left side. Because it's a minus 2x, I'm going to add 2x to both sides of the equation. 4x plus 2x, those can combine to become 6x. 18 comes down. Negative 2x plus 2x is 0, so it cancels. Negative 24 just comes down. Make sure we're bringing down that sign. Okay, do the next step. Try the next step on your own. And if you moved the 18 to the other side, that would be your correct next step. It's a positive 18, so we're subtracting 18 from both sides. So 6x comes down. 18 minus 18 is 0. Negative 24 minus 18 is negative 42. Last step, final step to get our final answer for this problem. 6 times x. We want to get the x by itself, so we divide both sides by 6. Negative 42 divided by 6 gets me negative 7. And that is my final answer. And there we have it. So that is solving multi-step equations. We will do more practice with this, but that is it for now. If you guys have any questions, please bring them to class so we can talk about them together. I hope you guys have a great day, and I will see you guys soon.